When you enter a situation in which you are actually, a learning situation, in which you are trying to acquire a certain amount of knowledge, or a certain type of knowledge, most people come into a learning situation with certain boundaries already set around their thinking, which makes epistemology a very important question. Epistemology is really, it's two very simple questions. What qualifies as knowledge? What is knowledge, and how do we get it? And contrary to popular opinion, not everything that people believe qualifies as knowledge. People like to put boundaries around their thinking. With some people, it's political boundaries. With other people, it's religious boundaries. In other words, there are lines that they don't want to cross. In science, you can't really do that. Not only in science can you not really do that, but you can't do it in any area in which your goal is to learn the truth or to determine the truth as closely as you can determine it. If you put, the only restraints are those of reason and common experience. Those are the guidelines that should be in place for everybody. But if you come into a learning situation and there is a religious line which you're not going to be willing to cross, then you forfeit the possibility that you will learn everything it's possible to learn. If there's a political line that you're not willing to cross, then you can forget about acquiring knowledge because your barriers are up and you're not willing to go past them. To teach intelligent design creationism in a public school would have a profound effect on the goal that every democracy has to keep in mind, and that's to have an educated, informed public. The public right now has the American public has a very low level of scientific literacy. That's already a problem. They also, with respect to many other issues, have a very low level of information. Americans have more access to more information than anybody on earth, and yet they are among the most poorly informed people on the planet, because so many of the outlets through which they get their news, the chief one being television, simply doesn't inform people anymore to the extent that it used to. So if creationism is put into a public school science class and people get the idea that this is science, it's going to even more drastically reduce the level of public literacy in science. It's going to reduce the level of accurate information below what it already is. It would further corrode both science literacy and the information that the public should have to make good decisions about what educational policy should be. Methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism are related but different things. Methodological naturalism, in the most general way I can describe it, means it's a procedural protocol. It's a way of going about learning something, and it's what scientists do. What they do is to limit their explanations to natural explanations of natural phenomena. The methodologies, the particular ways that they go about answering questions, there are lots of methodologies in science. There are lab experiments, there's field research. All of them, though, have to adhere to the requirements of logical reasoning, and they certainly have to stay within the boundaries of empirical accessibility. We have 5 senses, and only 5, and what lies beyond the reach of those senses in science simply lies beyond the reach of the scientist. So the scientist relies on using his 5 senses and his powers of reasoning to understand the natural world, and that's really what methodological naturalism is. Philosophical naturalism is a view of everything there is. It goes beyond science. Science is limited to natural explanations. But the philosophical naturalist, looking at the absence of an epistemology for religion, or for the supernatural, for supernatural religion, looking at the absence of a methodology by which to learn things about the supernatural, simply decides, for not just lack of a methodology or just lack of an epistemology, but usually for other reasons too. For example, the moral problem of evil, that's involved as well. A philosophical naturalist is a person who believes that there really nothing exists beyond the natural world that scientists study, that there simply isn't anything else to learn about beyond nature. Now that's a very different thing from deciding simply to stay within the boundaries of natural explanation in order to explain things. Methodological naturalism does not require people to make the transition into philosophical naturalism. There are scientists who recognize that it's logically consistent to believe that they can explain the world naturalistically, but that from a personal standpoint, to construct a larger system of meaning around their natural explanations. They make the personal decision to place their hopes, in the existence of a supernatural, because it gives what they do greater meaning, not only as scientists but as people, but they don't confuse the two. So it's certainly possible to be a scientist developing naturalistic explanations for the natural world, but yet to construct around those explanations as a person, as a human being, a supernatural context for those natural explanations. Many scientists do that, and I have friends who do that. But yet other people, other scientists, for different reasons, usually not having to do strictly with science, decide that I just can't make the transition to believing in the supernatural. And they find reasons that tip them to the other side. And so they are philosophical naturalists. Their comprehensive understanding of reality does not include the supernatural because they're simply not willing to make that leap without convincing evidence, and they don't find any. So it's certainly possible to be a methodological naturalist, as all scientists have to be if they're doing good science, but not be a philosophical naturalist. That certainly isn't logically entailed by the way scientists do their science.